Morning papers this morning with political journalist Zoe Grunwald and entertainment and royal correspondent at The Telegraph, India McTaggart. Welcome to both of you. Inevitably, once again, the paper's dominated by the war in Iran. India, you've picked out the front page of your paper, The Telegraph, to kick us off, and they're suggesting that Trump is thinking about troops on the ground.
Yes, exactly. So the headline is Trump ready to put boots on the ground. Obviously, there's a lot of conflicting messaging going on, and there has been for quite some time. But one of the new developments yesterday included that the Pentagon has drawn up plans for an invasion of Karg Island, the key terminal in the Persian Gulf. So this would include American boots on the ground, which would obviously mark quite a watershed moment in this war. It would expose US soldiers to potential missile and drone attacks. It would also exacerbate and probably elongate the war, which was only expected to last a few weeks and is now going into its fourth week. So far, we've just seen air power deployed at Iranian targets. So yes, an on-the-ground military presence would be quite the change, and I think would possibly escalate it quite a bit. But as we all know, sort of the conflict is threatening the largest distribution to crude oil in the history of the global oil market. So perhaps Donald Trump, and we know his growing frustration over this issue, perhaps this is the way that he sees he has to go forward with it. Yeah,
I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it? 50,000 troops in the region already. They're sending another approximately 9,000, so it's like going to be nearly 60,000 troops. This is a man who came to office promising no foreign wars, no boots on the ground outside of the United States, and yet here we go.
It's almost like he's a president full of contradictions. It's almost like he says one thing and means another and changes his mind on a dime. I think there is going to be a lot of disquiet in the MAGA camp at this particular, these plans to potentially put boots on the ground, if there wasn't already, about the incursion into Iran.
Well, yeah, and there's a big question about whether he will do that, because he's also posted on Truth Social...
He's winding it down.
That he's winding down the war, it's won, he said, and talking about how he's fulfilled various objectives. So he's keeping everybody guessing.
Exactly, and he's also saying he doesn't want a ceasefire at the same time. So, I mean, it honestly changes sort of by the minute in this conflict.
Right, so let's bring you in on the Guardian story here.
Yeah.
Not for the first time in the past few months, Trump has lashed out at his allies.
That's right. He's accused NATO of being cowards, essentially, for failing to answer his request to send warships to the Strait. He has provoked frustration and anger amongst NATO allies, European countries, and of course in the UK as well. The UK have now allowed UK bases to be used to strike Iranian sites, which would be targeting British allies and interests in the Gulf, and they're also potentially to help defend the Strait now. But Trump has, obviously, that's not good enough for Donald Trump. He's described the move last night as very late. He said they should have acted faster. You know, and this comes off weeks of Donald Trump trying to put pressure on Europe and the UK by just essentially bad-mouthing them publicly, talking about, you know, they don't want people to join the war when it's already won. Well, it's not already won. You know, talking about the UK as cowards, comparing Keir Starmer to Churchill, essentially trying to put that pressure on these countries to follow suit. But thus far, most of Europe have remained pretty resolute that they don't want to join in this war, probably because they don't really know what the purpose is and they don't really know what the conclusion would be.
He's also posted since saying that the Hormuz Strait needs to be guarded by other nations, not us, not the US.
Yes, exactly. So trying to already devolve responsibility for it while at the same time pressuring them to get involved. So, again, doesn't make much sense. But I did hear a suggestion in the office earlier this week that Keir Starmer, from someone who works on the foreign desk, so sort of across this quite well, that Keir Starmer could be on the right side of history for this and for his delay. And obviously, Trump didn't consult his closest allies. But, you know, are we the closest allies anymore? Clearly not. I mean, we haven't seen a degradation of this special relationship as much as we have done in the last...
Let's have a look at the time front page. We kind of touched on it already about the UK government. The UK government now agreeing that these strikes can take place from UK bases by the US in terms of collective defence. And I wonder if... Are we going to find ourselves in the position, perhaps just by the way that this thing plays out, that the UK, France, other nations will have involved if they want to make sure that the Straits of Hormuz can actually be opened?
I mean, this is the problem, right? Keir Starmer faces a dire situation here. We have just come out, or the seeming energy crisis that we were in was just abating, the cost of living crisis, and now we're plunged right back into one, which could be even worse. So I think, as you point out, they probably don't have much of a choice as it stands unless the strait is reopened very quickly. I mean, Donald Trump suggests that it will be reopened with a simple manoeuvre, but it doesn't really, evidence seems to suggest otherwise. So the PM has now given the US the green light to carry out strikes from British bases to protect the strait. Obviously, worry is growing in government. I mean, there is a quote that I picked out from our paper from an oil veteran who said, "The Russia shock in 2022 was a picnic compared to what is now happening. The world will hit a brick wall within 2 months." And we know Brent crude is already at $112 a barrel. It was at 73. So this is already a huge jump, and it may only get worse. So, yes, I think he doesn't have that much of a choice. His hands are a bit tied.
Well, yeah, and countries are going to be scrambling to because countries around the world are going to be affected by these energy shocks, aren't they? And everyone's trying to work out what to do next. How do you think this will play out?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is going to be problematic. And it's not just the UK, obviously, who are dealing with the cost of living crisis and the impact of these oil prices, but of course the UK and Europe will be affected. But what was also very interesting is where the Gulf states play into this, because originally they were pretty cautious about getting involved in this. But as Iran have been firing and hitting their assets and putting pressure on the Hormuz Strait and all these kind of things, actually, there was reporting, I think it was in the Times, that they increasingly feel like, do you know what, we just got to get this job done now that it's happening. It's really...
We're in it now.
We're in it now, so we have to finish it. And I think you might see that ramping up of pressure, especially with oil prices, but also just the damage Iran is doing in the region, that actually there might be this coming together of, OK, look, we need to finish this off. But it isn't easy. You know, they decapitated the Iranian regime very, very quickly, but it is a very resilient regime in how it is integrated in Iran. You know, it is prepared for this moment for some time.
Yep.
It isn't quite as easy as just taking it out and watching regime change.
Yeah, and who knows, even if the US do pull out, whether or not Iran will continue its attacks and continue to choke off the Strait of Hormuz. The Eye focuses on the pressures that we've been talking about on our energy prices. Zoe, talk us through what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, you do, whatever you think of her, you do have to feel sorry for Rachel Reeves, because every time she is stressing over this this headroom, it is always wiped out by some kind of global shock that is, you very arguably beyond her control. So particularly here, the economists at the Bank of England are warning that Britain might need tax rises to cope with the impact of oil war. Many people would already suggest that the UK needed tax rises anyway to deal with the fact that we are always just trying to count the pennies in order to get a little bit of headroom. But absolutely now, when we're talking about inflation, higher borrowing costs, the strain on public services, there is absolutely this sense that the government is going to need to find money from somewhere. At the minute, the UK is spending £13 billion a month simply just servicing the interest on national debt. We just had the spring statement, which was fairly quiet and slightly overshadowed by all of this, but,
It's the day after, wasn't it? The day after he launched the war.
I think it's the same week. It was,
And it definitely felt conspicuous in its absence, because this was kind of brewing. Everybody knew this is the big thing that the Treasury has to deal with. It doesn't matter how much they try and bean count and how much they'll try and, put money to one side and take money from other bits. We are so connected by global supply chains. We are so at the whim of what the US decides and what's happening in Europe that it just simply doesn't really matter these days. If the Treasury finds a bit of headroom, it could so easily be wiped out.
Yeah, it really could. They are going to meet next week, I think. It's going to be cabinet. And I saw some reporting as well that the Prime Minister is going to meet with the Governor of the Bank of England as well to see just what can be done to try and help people. I think there's going to be some kind of offer. We've always had the heating oil offer, haven't we? I think that there will be some kind of offer to try and help struggling people.
Yes, definitely. I mean, Sir Keir is going to have to face some difficult decisions about how he might support households with the rising energy bills. I mean, we're already seeing higher mortgage rates, higher prices at the pumps, higher flights. I saw an article yesterday urging everyone to book all their 2026 flights now, which stressed me out, exactly.
I've just cancelled some.
Oh,
so
really?
you have to rebook, yeah.
You're going that way, were you?
I was going to go to Thailand.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Maybe not now.
Yeah, my friend had to cancel a leg of her honeymoon that was in Dubai.
Yeah, mine was a honeymoon as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Anyway. So it's quite extraordinary.
Let's move on to another story that a number of the front pages have actually reflected on, with photographs at least, and this is the death of Jenny Murray that was announced yesterday.
Dame Jenny Murray, yes, the longest-serving Women's Hour presenter at the BBC on Radio 4, a career there of 33 years, which is so extraordinary. And she had some remarkable interviews. She interviewed Margaret Thatcher, Hillary Clinton. She was a staunch feminist. That was sort of, obviously, you know, as a presenter on Women's Hour, something that she championed. She joined the broadcaster in 1987, left in 2020, started on local radio. But she died at the age of 75, and actually she had just started a new podcast at the beginning of this year. So it was really unexpected. I mean, it's young. So it took everyone completely by surprise, and obviously tributes poured in. She most recently interviewed Dame Prue Leith, and it came out on March 10th. So it's all very sad, but she was such an interesting woman, and she actually is quite well known. She was in the press a lot in the last few years because of a sort of kerfuffle she had with the BBC about being vocal about the trans row and her gender-critical views. Obviously, as we know, there's a lot of push and pull with that in the BBC's impartiality. So she had to cancel a talk at Oxford University that she was due to make in 2018 because of comments that she made. And sort of similarly to J.K. Rowling, she was very protective of women's rights within that space. So that was quite interesting, and what I had to tie in, because I covered it for The Telegraph, so I had to just tie that sort of row in. But she sort of remained firm, and she said she was sort of banned by the BBC from talking about the trans row on air.
Wow.
You only have about 20 seconds, but did she speak to your generation as well? She's very much in my generation.
I think Women's Hour will always be an iconic show, and I think, you know, the work she did as a broadcaster for that has been recognised. I mean, clearly the political interviews she's done as well have been really consequential, so, yeah.
Yeah. We're out of time,
We are.
sadly.
Let's do it again, though, next hour, yeah?
Let's do it again next hour, and the
stuff.
one after. So thanks very much indeed. Stay with us.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?